Fake HOA called 911 on Firefighter. He was the fire chief's son. She Part 1. It was a warm Tuesday morning in the quiet, tree-lined neighborhood of Willow Glen Estates, the kind of suburban community where every blade of grass was trimmed to regulation height, and the HOA newsletters arrived like clockwork on the first of each month. But unlike most communities, Willow Glen didn't actually have a legally registered HOA. It had something far more dangerous, a group of self-appointed protectors of neighborhood image, led by none other than Karen Monroe. At 49 years old, Karen took great pride in maintaining what she called suburban dignity. She wore pastel sweater sets, kept her hydrangeas in perfect bloom, and ran an unofficial HOA out of her sunroom. Armed with a clipboard, binoculars, and a printer that spat out notices like threats from a petty dictator, she monitored every driveway, every porch, and every person who didn't belong. And that morning, someone definitely didn't belong. From her front window, Karen watched as a tall, sweat-covered young black man in a soot-streaked gray shirt stepped out of the modest rental house 2 doors down. He was hauling a heavy duffel bag over one shoulder, wearing black fire-resistant pants and boots. His face was partially smudged with ash. His shirt bore the faint outline of a fire department patch. Karen's eyes narrowed. "Another one," she muttered. She grabbed her phone and walked onto her porch, dialing as she walked. 911, what's your emergency? There's a suspicious man, possibly breaking into 228 Maple Ridge, Karen said crisply. He looks dirty, could be a drifter or something. Ma'am, is he acting aggressively? He's walking around with a giant bag, she said. Looks like he's casing the place. This is a family neighborhood. She hung up and watched, satisfied. Let's see what he says when the cops show up. Jalen Carter, 27, had just finished a double shift at Station 14. He'd spent the night pulling a teenager out of a car wreck, then sprinting through smoke to clear a second-floor apartment fire at 4 a.m. His shoulders ached. His throat was dry from smoke. His boots felt like concrete. He had just started staying at the rental house his godfather offered him while he saved to buy his first home. The neighborhood was quiet, pretty, and boring, which was fine by him. He just wanted sleep. As he unlocked the door, he heard tires on pavement. A police cruiser pulled up fast. A second followed. Jalen turned around slowly, confused. 2 officers jumped out. Hands in the air. What? Now! Jalen dropped his duffel in shock and raised his hands. I live here. Karen stood across the street, arms crossed, phone aimed, recording. A neighbor named Sophia Delgado, a mother of 2 and lifelong Willow Glen resident, stepped out from her porch next door and shouted, Wait, that's Jalen. He's the new firefighter. But the officers didn't hear her, yet. They began approaching Jalen, one hand on a taser, the other barking orders. Turn around, on your knees. Jalen, exhausted, stunned, and ashamed, did as he was told. I'm a firefighter, he said. I'm with Station 14. I just got off a shift. Karen's voice called from across the street, smug and loud. Oh, please, anyone can say that. If he's a firefighter, I'm the Queen of England. The next moment changed everything. Sophia ran over and pointed at Jalen's duffel bag, now open from being dropped. Inside, a scorched firefighter's helmet, his turnout jacket with visible burn marks, a department-issued radio. The officers paused. One bent down to look closer. He picked up the jacket and read the stitched name, Carter J. The second officer's face shifted. Wait, Carter? He radioed in a call. Karen, still filming, shouted again. What are you doing? He's lying. That stuff is probably stolen. The officer turned around slowly. Ma'am, please put the phone down. Step back. 5 minutes later, a fire department truck pulled up. From it stepped Chief Thomas Carter, still in uniform. Jalen stood up slowly, finally allowed to move. Chief Carter stormed past the officers, past the open bag, and stared at Karen. You called 911 on my son, he said. Karen blinked. Your what? My son, he repeated. Jalen Carter, firefighter, hero, and you made him kneel in front of his own house after saving lives all night. Karen stuttered. I didn't know. He looks suspicious. Because he's black and tired? The chief said, voice low and sharp. The cameras were still rolling, and someone across the street had live-streamed the entire thing. By that afternoon, the video had gone viral. Part of the live stream included Karen saying, "If he's a firefighter, I'm the Queen of England." Police officers drawing weapons on a man holding fire gear. Chief Carter's arrival and reveal. Karen being stunned into silence. Within hours, it was on Reddit, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. HOA Karen calls. Cops on black firefighter. He's the fire chief's son. To justice for Jalen. Joshua fake HOA. Joshua firefighter. While black. Josh Karen got down. The comments were brutal. She made him kneel with ash on his shirt and medals in his bag. How many times do they have to prove they belong? She picked the wrong family to mess with. Local news stations showed up. Channel 6 ran the story under the headline, "False Alarm. Local hero detained by police after HOA member calls 911." Karen tried to get ahead of the wave. She posted a clarification on the Willow Glen Community Facebook page. "I was only trying to protect our neighborhood. There was no racial intent. I thought someone was breaking in, and I acted responsibly." The comment section exploded. One neighbor replied, "You filmed him like you were hoping something bad would happen. That's not protection. That's profiling." Another added, "My cousin died in a fire last year. If a firefighter like Jalen had been there, maybe they'd still be alive. You humiliated a hero." Across town, Jalen sat in his godfather's living room with Max the dog on his lap. His phone kept buzzing. Messages from fellow firefighters, high school classmates, strangers. He felt exposed, angry, but mostly tired. His dad sat beside him. "You didn't do anything wrong." Jalen nodded. "Still hurts, though. Not the kneeling. Not even the cops. It was her face. She really saw me and thought, criminal." The chief put a hand on his shoulder. "People like her are loud, but now the truth's louder. Tu yet voy, doi jai la fan tu, 5,000 hanas tu, kua truyen." Fake HOA called 911 on firefighter. He was the fire chief's son. Part 2. The next morning, Karen Monroe woke up to find her name trending on the internet. Not in the way she had once hoped, like being recognized for her leadership in community preservation, but as the face of reckless racism and abuse of authority. Her face contorted mid-sentence, saying, "If he's a firefighter, I'm the Queen of England," was now the lead image on viral videos with millions of views. Her inbox had exploded overnight. Hundreds of angry messages, some threatening, many mocking. Her phone rang. It was Trish, her closest friend from the HOA committee. "Karen, have you seen the news? Channel 6, Channel 8, even national coverage. You've gone viral, in the worst way." Karen groaned and sat up, rubbing her temples. "This is all a huge misunderstanding. I just wanted to keep the neighborhood safe." Trish was quiet for a moment, then said, "People don't think that, Karen. They think you judged a hero by his skin." Meanwhile, across town, the fire station held a press conference. A row of firefighters stood in full uniform, lined behind a long table draped in red. Seated at the center was Chief Thomas Carter, his expression unreadable, his hands folded before him. Flanked by the mayor and the city's diversity and inclusion officer, he opened with a statement. "My son, firefighter Jalen Carter, served this community with courage, integrity, and selflessness. He risked his life just hours before being humiliated and detained in front of his own home because someone thought he didn't belong." He looked directly into the cameras. What happened wasn't just profiling, it was dehumanizing. It was a reminder that even in uniform, black men are still seen as suspects first. The silence in the room was heavy. Jalen stood beside his father, tall, stoic, but clearly shaken. He didn't speak much, but when asked if he planned to press charges, he said, "I'm not looking to punish anyone, but I want this to change. Not just for me, for every firefighter, soldier, EMT, or worker of color who comes home and still gets treated like a threat." The crowd erupted in applause. Within hours, national outlets picked up the story. Headlines read, "Hero or Threat? Firefighter detained in his own neighborhood." Karen calls cops on fire chief's son. Public outrage grows. On Twitter, celebrities and public figures began sharing the video, including a famous retired firefighter who tweeted, "This young man saved lives while someone else called 911 on him. Shameful. Respect to Jalen Carter and his father." Even the governor's office issued a statement condemning what happened and calling for an audit of neighborhood policing protocols. Karen's world began unraveling. The HOA committee, which had never been legally recognized, was formally dissolved by the city. A cease and desist order was issued against Karen and anyone acting under her authority. Neighbors she had once ruled over, like a queen, now avoided eye contact or glared openly. One family moved their daughter's lemonade stand across the street, refusing to sell anything to the lady who called the cops on a firefighter. Karen tried to post a second apology video. This time she sat in her living room, wearing a somber navy sweater and holding back tears. I am deeply sorry to Mr. Carter and his family. My actions were based on concern for the safety of our community, but I now see how my assumptions hurt someone who deserved nothing but gratitude. But the internet wasn't buying it. One commenter wrote, "You were concerned about your comfort, not anyone's safety." Another said, "Apologizing because you got caught isn't the same as changing." Even Trish sent her a message after the video went up. "Karen, maybe it's time to stop speaking and start listening." A week later, Karen was asked to attend a community reconciliation forum. It was hosted at the local civic center and moderated by a nonprofit that specialized in conflict resolution and anti-bias training. The event, packed wall-to-wall, included firefighters, community leaders, activists, and concerned residents. Karen almost didn't show up, but something about the silence in her house, the empty calls from her now former committee, and the gut-deep knowledge that she'd crossed a line made her walk through those doors. She wore plain clothes, no pearls, no clipboard. When her name was called, she stepped to the mic. She didn't read a statement. She just stood there for a long moment, facing the room that had every reason to despise her. Finally, she spoke. "I was wrong." A few murmurs echoed through the hall. "I judged someone because he didn't look like what I expected, because he was tired and covered in soot and black. I thought I was protecting something, but what I was doing was protecting a lie." She paused. "The lie that appearances equal safety, that control equals peace, that people like me get to decide who belongs and who doesn't." She looked up, her voice shaking. "I humiliated a man who had just saved lives. I called the police when I should have said, 'Thank you.' I know an apology isn't enough, but I offer it publicly to Jalen Carter, his father, and to every person I've ever made feel less than." There was a long pause. Then someone clapped, then more. And finally the room echoed with reluctant, restrained, but real applause. After the forum, Jalen approached her. She stood when she saw him, unsure if she should speak first. He nodded once. "That took courage," Karen swallowed. "Not as much as it took for you to kneel with your hands up while wearing a hero's uniform." Jalen looked at her, then extended his hand. They shook. But outside, the real test was still waiting. Public sentiment was still raw. Online threads still buzzed with anger. People still posted memes. But among the outrage, something new was emerging. The idea of repair. A group of high school students started a campaign called "We See You Heroes," where they delivered thank you cards to firefighters, paramedics, and EMTs of color across the city. The mayor signed an executive order to fund community inclusion training in all first responder departments. And Jalen, he was nominated for the city's annual Courage and Integrity Award. Meanwhile, Karen spent her days cleaning up, not just her reputation, but her actual community. She volunteered for the fire station's public safety initiative. She helped deliver groceries to retired veterans in the area. She stepped down from any public-facing leadership and instead joined the city's Neighborhood Equity Committee. As a learner, not a leader. Part 3. It had been 3 months since the incident on Maple Ridge Lane. The public had mostly moved on. Attention shifted to the next viral video, the next controversy. But for those involved, the ripples hadn't stopped. Karen Monroe no longer called herself a community leader. She no longer printed HOA flyers or patrolled driveways with her clipboard. Her Facebook group had been archived. Her email signature, once boasting "Founder, Willow Glen Residential Standards Board," had been erased completely. But she didn't disappear. She showed up, quietly, to the food pantry at the fire station, to the monthly town cleanups, and even, though she still felt a twinge of shame, to the open neighborhood forums on diversity and inclusion. She didn't speak. She just listened. Jalen Carter, meanwhile, returned to full active duty. The city had offered him a desk position after the incident, concerned about media attention, but he refused. "I didn't sign up to sit behind a desk while others run into fire," he told the chief. "Let me do my job." And so he did. Call after call, emergency after emergency. He'd built a quiet, humble rhythm to his life. Most people treated him with respect now, but he still noticed the occasional second glance when he wasn't in uniform. He had learned trust was earned, but suspicion didn't always need a reason. One Thursday morning in mid-September, the sky over Willow Glen was an eerie shade of orange. Dry heat, high winds, and a spark from faulty wiring in a vacant lot was all it took. At 11:42 a.m., dispatchers reported a rapidly spreading brush fire threatening homes on the west edge of the neighborhood. Station 14 was the first on the scene. Jalen was the first through the smoke. The fire spread faster than anyone expected. A combination of wind and summer drought had turned trees into torches. It was no longer a small brush fire. It was barreling toward homes. Families were already fleeing. Embers jumped rooftops. And somewhere in the chaos, a mother screamed, "My son! He's still inside!" The address, 226 Maple Ridge, Karen Monroe's house. Jalen didn't hesitate. "Gear up, let's move," he barked. Smoke was thick, visibility low, but he'd trained for this. He charged through the front door with his partner close behind. Inside, the air was choking hot. Furniture smoldered, curtains caught flame. In the back room, under a bed, they found the boy, 7 years old, unconscious from smoke. Jalen dropped to his knees, pulled the child out, and handed him to his partner. "Go! I'll cover!" As they ran out, a wooden beam cracked and fell. Jalen barely rolled away in time. The ceiling began collapsing. The fire was consuming everything. Outside, firefighters sprayed water, neighbors cried, and sirens wailed. Karen arrived moments later, barefoot, shaking, pulled from a meeting downtown by a neighbor's frantic call. She pushed through the crowd just in time to see her house, her beautiful, rule-perfect house, engulfed in flames. But what made her fall to her knees wasn't the fire. It was seeing Jalen stumble from the back porch, carrying her son's limp body over his shoulder. Blackened gear, ash in his hair, breathing hard, eyes focused only on getting the child to safety. Karen gasped. He didn't see her at first, but when their eyes met, something passed between them. No hate, no bitterness, only purpose, only humanity. The boy survived. He spent the night in the ICU recovering from smoke inhalation. Doctors said 10 more minutes and it might have been too late. Jalen had saved him, the child of the woman who once called 911 on him. The next morning, a reporter from Channel 6 stood outside the burned remains of Karen's home. Yesterday, the neighborhood witnessed not just a fire, but a full-circle act of grace. Firefighter Jalen Carter, once racially profiled in this very cul-de-sac, risked his life to save the child of the woman who misjudged him. The clip went viral again, but this time there were no hashtags of shame, just words like forgiveness, redemption, honor. Karen spent the entire night at the hospital. She sat beside her son, who slept peacefully, an oxygen mask over his face. And when the door opened and Jalen walked in plain clothes, a bandage on his arm, she stood up slowly. They looked at each other. Her eyes were raw, red. "Jalen," she whispered, You saved him." He nodded. "He's a strong kid." She swallowed hard. "I don't deserve to thank you." He shrugged. "I didn't do it for you." Silence. Then she said, "But I still owe you everything." 1 week later at City Hall, Karen requested to speak during the public comment period. People looked surprised as she stepped to the mic. Wearing simple clothes, hair tied back, no agenda, no clipboard. She took a breath. "Months ago, I called 911 on a man who I thought didn't belong, because he was covered in ash, because he looked tired, because he was black. That man turned out to be Jalen Carter, a firefighter, a hero. And 2 weeks ago, he saved my son's life." She paused. "You all know the story, but what you don't know is what it did to me. It broke the person I used to be, and thank God for that. I'm not here to ask for your forgiveness. I'm here to tell you I'm changing. Slowly, quietly, every day. She looked out over the crowd. To those I hurt, I see you now, and I will never stop trying to be worthy of the grace I was shown. 6 months later, a new sign appeared at the entrance of Willow Glen Estates. Not the old metal plaque that Karen once insisted was too rustic. This one was carved wood, handcrafted by local artists. It read, "Welcome to Willow Glen, a community built on courage and kindness." Underneath, in smaller letters, "Dedicated to firefighter Jalen Carter for service beyond duty." 1 year later, at the city's annual Firefighters Recognition Gala, the final award was the Medal of Community Honor, the highest award for service outside of duty. Jalen stood on stage wearing a tailored black suit. He looked out at the crowd and smiled faintly. The presenter, none other than Karen Monroe, stood at the podium. She was no longer the face of HOA enforcement. Now she was part of the city's Volunteer Resilience Corps, dedicated to healing divisions in the community. She spoke clearly. "Tonight, I present this medal not just to a hero, but to a man who taught us what humility, grace, and justice truly mean." Jalen stepped forward and took the medal. They shook hands. The flashbulbs went off. But what the cameras didn't capture was what she whispered as she leaned in. "Thank you for saving more than just my son." At the end,